Mistä nask monute pepik squatta goga entumia ho takakioti puiteuti tagutea. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the traditional owners of this territory for their goodness and generosity. To the workshop organizers, many thanks for ultimately obliging this on-again, off-again speaker. Special thanks to the CIHR and my colleagues new and old. Today is the day our fallen warrior and iconic hero, Elijah Harper, is being laid to rest in his home community, Red Sucker Lake First Nation in northern Manitoba. With the support of Indigenous leaders and the assistance of a non-Indigenous mentor knowledgeable in parliamentary procedures, Elijah held up his eagle feather and said no to the Meech Lake Accord in 1990 because it excluded Aboriginal people. Notably, most Canadians were behind Elijah's protest. Elijah has now joined our ancestors, the biggest block of mentors we've ever had and will ever have. He, like me, would have marveled at what was said and suggested at this workshop. For one, mentorship was defined as the act and art of dipahikewin, giving back, to essential Indigenous scholars and academics through shared capacity, common cultures and histories, mutual contributions, and related communities. Almost without fail for us here, mentorship is shaped by Utskiskaitaman, far back memory, Pimemuwin, thinking well of self, Usitikewin, creative genius, and Kiskaitamawin, traditional knowledge. Egwa Kisapanwin, example setting. Our collective response to mentorship is Sigema. We have to confirm what we cannot reasonably doubt. Competing in a brain-based knowledge economy is both a challenge and an opportunity. At this workshop, we have opened up vistas for one another so we can encourage, cultivate, and discipline mentorship on behalf of essential Indigenous scholars and academics. Without doubt, the nature, source, direction, and pace of change in research interests, funding, and partnerships is binding mentors and mentees through spiritual compacts and social contracts like never before. Together, mentees and mentors will muster up their limited human reserves and suffer through critical inquiries like whose evidence counts? Will it be Indigenous people's dreams, sensorial analysis, intuition, imagination? Mentors and mentees will debate the roles of the moneyed private sector, the policy-setting public sector, the grounded voluntary sector, and the trending blended sectors in research. Without reservation, mentors and mentees will discuss A, the co-optation of Indigenous intelligentsia, B, the dearth of investigator-initiated research over research that is responsible to government and industry, C, the increasing tension between the people, the planet, and policies, D, the coexistence of social recessions, with recessionary economies. E, the silver tsunami and the corresponding Indigenous tidal wave of potential and possibilities. Without fail, mentors will decide on singing our mentees home from their academic journeys as many times and in many ways as necessary. Mentorship is the art and act of giving back. Therefore, it will be done in the spirit of wholeheartedness and fair-mindedness. In our action plans for mentorship programs, we will sign more than one script. Written into these scripts will be pagtinggeuna, giveaways, the most important being the surrender of our time, energy, and passion to mentees. These scripts will include utingemagana, takeaways, including research questions, fellowships, proposals, and research action research. The endpoint will be asunamagana, regifting, spreading the ethos of mentorship beyond boundaries, worldviews, and views of the world. At this point in time, mentees and mentors will say ekwuse to one another. Ekwuse is a Cree word that stands in for 11 English terms. So, thus, in that way, right, all right, there, that is it, that is all, well, enough, and see you. Thank you, hi, merci.
I was the lead investigator of the New Zealand arm of the very first tripartite collaboration to be funded by the CIHR, the NHMRC, and the Health Research Council. And this is the very first time I've had the opportunity to talk to people about some of the benefits of that collaboration. And I'm still waiting for the evaluators to come and talk to us about the good things that came out of these collaborations. And that's been talked about today, and I see that as a significant gap in terms of these tripartite arrangements. If they're going to continue, and I believe they should, then presumably the people who provide the funding would want to know about the benefits that accrue from these collaborations. We're still waiting for the knock on the door from the evaluator to come along and find out how effective and how useful these projects were for Indigenous people in the 3 countries that we represent here today. I'm very pleased to say that our project generated some important publications. It produced some very important presentations at conferences, and it also contributed to capacity building, certainly in New Zealand. Meda, who was here with us this morning, gained a PhD as a result of this collaboration. So from my point of view, there has been some significant outputs that have contributed to Indigenous research capacity building. I just quickly want to share with you a document that we created during the course of the project, and I thought it might be useful in terms of what we're going to get you to do in a few minutes time. These are the protocols that we developed, the Indigenous participants in the collaboration from New Zealand, Australia and Canada. We met on a regular basis, and we determined that we needed to develop some protocols about how we as Indigenous people were going to work together, but also how the non-Indigenous members of our team were going to work with us. So we developed these protocols, and I'm just going to quickly lead you through them, because some of the observations we made in terms of these protocols might be useful when you talk about how we're going to develop a mentorship program across the 3 countries. Now, I've got 10 copies of this, of these protocols, and I'm happy to distribute them, but I'm going to also give you an address further on where you can get an online version of them. So, these are the headings that we developed. We determined that Indigenous issues should be up front and how they were dealt with should be done in a respectful way. We talked about Indigenous leadership. And that we found that was really important in terms of working with the non-Indigenous people, that the Indigenous CIs needed to be in leadership roles right throughout the whole course of the project. We wanted to ensure that Indigenous issues were represented correctly and that protocols needed to be observed when anybody spoke about the project. We wanted to ensure that there was capacity building and training opportunities. We asked that there be an Indigenous caucus, and this outlined that the role of the caucus, the frequency of meetings, membership, and the position of chair, which revolve from one country to another annually. And then we have a section that talked about establishing and maintaining relationships with other Indigenous networks. And so, while there was a focus in each country on Indigenous issues, we felt that this would be strengthened by developing networks across the 3 countries. And I'm really pleased to say that this project has led to the consolidation of a family of Indigenous networks across the 3 countries in which I still participate, and I know other members of the research project still participate in those networks. We wanted there to be a clear communication program, and given that there were geographical distances between the 3 countries and time differences, this communication program was designed to overcome those particular barriers. Relationship management, how we were going to monitor the progress of the project was important, how we'd resolve any issues that came up. We thought it was important to get community feedback, and we ensured that happened. Future outputs and collaborations was also part of these protocols. And then we talked about the outputs, publications, authorship. In academia, we know that certain people want to be at the beginning of the list of authors, and won't accept any position other than that. So we included a section on that, and we outlined a section, responsibility of team and individual members, and then the importance of knowledge transfer. So these protocols are outlined a little bit more in this paper. If you're interested in a copy, I can give you one, but if you would like to look at it online, you can go to Meta's PhD, in which she includes something about these protocols. You'd have to borrow that from the University of Waikato, obviously. But they're also outlined on this website, www.kaupapamaori.com. If you've got a pen and interested in that, write that down, because I have to say that's a very useful website about Māori methodologies. And if you'd like to communicate with me more directly, that's my email address. Don't try the University of Sydney anymore, because I'm no longer there. But if you would like to communicate with me, I'd love to hear from you. Now, just a final word about those protocols. They're great on paper, but if people decide that they're not going to observe them or pay any attention to them, then they become a little bit meaningless. And sad to say, there were people on our team who paid little attention to these protocols. So that in itself provides a challenge. How do we as Indigenous researchers make sure our non-Indigenous colleagues actually sign up to this? And I could also relate a whole litany of ways in which these protocols were ignored by some of our non-Indigenous colleagues, and that's also a lesson. I'm getting a message to move on. Yes. That's also, but that's a very important point I'm making at the moment, Samantha. I will finish on that point.